My next Mother's Day project is going to be a necklace using these beautiful heart molds, the holy molds. So they have a little peg. When the piece fires, it has a hole in it. These are pretty large. I don't really like the way they turn out. My favorites are these two tiny ones. And I want to do the same type of project where the birth month flowers of the children are embedded in the glass. The three, the marigold, the chrysanthemum, and the violets are tiny. They will work. This lily of the valley, even the smallest pieces are way too big. So that's up for today. Try to figure out a way to put a lily of the valley in this project. And instead of making a spray of the flowers around the edge, instead of making a spray, my goal is to make a bouquet in the center. I'm going to use modeling glass for this project because I need lily of the valley that are teeny tiny, and you can make them with modeling glass. I'm not going to use a mold. I'm going to freeform them. It also gives me an opportunity to talk about what happens when you don't use up everything that you've made. And here are some samples. This is really, really hard. Still a little bit malleable. You can still break it apart, but you can't mold anything out of that because it's hard. This is clay I used last spring. Modeling glass, not clay, sorry. And so in order to reconstitute it, I took the dense white and I just added water. And it's really hard to tell how much water. I added too much. So instead of that rock hard mass I had, now I have something that's extremely pasty. There are two ways I would deal with this. Let it sit out and let the water evaporate off, and then just keep mixing until you get to the texture and consistency you want. You could also add a touch more glass powder. I would be very, very careful with that because you do not want the ratio to be too far off, but it can be a little bit off and still work just fine. So I'm going to play with this a little until I get it to the right texture to work with, and then I'll come back and show you how I'm going to make the lily of the valley flowers. I have the clay modeling glass close to the texture I need. Not quite, but it's close, and I don't want to mess with it too much. And I tried one, it will actually work. When you do this, you want to measure very carefully. To make just a tablespoon of a single color, you're going to use a tablespoon of glass powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of the powdered binder, 1.5 teaspoons of water, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of the liquid medium. I'm trying to bring back dried up clay to a useful state. So I added water, let it sit overnight. I think actually it's been sitting for 2 days, and I did not check it yesterday, so I'm not sure exactly how long you have to leave it, but it was way too pasty. So I added a little bit more glass powder, a little bit more of the binding medium, the binder, until I got it pretty close to what I needed. In order to make a lily of the valley, you're going to take a little pinch, roll it into a ball. Now I may air dry this, I may dry it in the little oven. Either way, it can sit on the back of a mold. Now you want it to be a little bit larger than you think the finished product should be. Modeling glass has about 15% shrinkage. So this piece, which has been fired, came out of the same mold as this piece, which has just been air dried. Once you've got your little ball, which is a little bit bigger than you think it needs to be, I use a little craft knife that is from my Cricut machine. I have a little speck of something in there. So I'm going to flatten it a little bit. And then I'm going to cut a little triangle shape out. another little triangle shape out. And you're going to end up with it looking like a little bell-shaped flower. Play a little until you have a shape you want. Mine are very rounded. You can pinch them to make them a little more oblong if you would like. Make a variety of sizes. It's hard to tell what the 15% is going to look like. My ultimate goal is I want them to be about this size. So mine, I've made a couple bigger. I'm going to have to go back and make a couple that are really small. Just grab a pinch, roll it into a ball, cut the petals, let it dry. I like to flatten it a little bit so that it maintains its shape a little bit better while it's being fired. And there you go. You have little lily of the valley bells. I have some left over from a project last year, and you'll notice they are gray. That is what happens at the low firing temperature that you use to fuse the glass bird modeling clay. So they start out gray, and then when you bring them up to a higher temperature, they turn white. Some of them do not go completely white. You will see in this one, the bottom two on both sprig are white, 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 and the top are not quite as clear white. A little bit of gray left in there. The hearts that I'm making are going to be brought to a full fuse, and I think these will turn pure white. You can see how tiny some of them are. This is the size. These little tiny bells are what I'm going to need for this project. And that will put them in the proper size range of the other pieces that I have. So I'm going to make a handful more of these because you can never have too many components for future projects. Any of the bells that are not perfect, I can touch up when they come out of the craft kiln or when they completely air dry. You can use a little knife, you can use scissors, you can use an emery board, a file. There are a lot of ways to clean up these shapes once they're dry. Some of them have gotten much too rounded, so you just take 2 fingers. Use this because it's a little bit, they're spread a little further apart. Just take 2 fingers and do a gentle pinch, and it'll clean up your shape. So I've treated both of these molds with zip spray. The first step is to get pieces of Tecta that will lay flat in the main part of the heart. So I have a big bucket of Tecta, and I'm going to be cutting pieces that will lay down a flat base, and then I'm going to build little pieces of Tecta around the edge so I make sure I have enough glass, and then that flat base in the center is where I will build the floral sprays. Now when you're filling these, you really want to make sure that you get a nice flat layer all the way around it, because as the glass warms, it's going to move. And because you're going to be building something that you want to maintain the shape of, you really want to be very careful that the movement around your bouquet is restricted as much as possible. And the way you're going to restrict that is making sure you have a nice layer of glass that is that base layer. So you just go in and take these little tiny shards and fill it in and make sure that first flat layer is really full and really flat. Once you've got a nice flat base, you're going to start putting in your flowers. And you want to make sure that you are mindful of how it's going to hang. And you drop them in. And like I said, these are going to look more like a bouquet or a little wildflower field rather than a spray of flowers. So I will keep them near each other, but we're going for a different look. If it falls off the edge, make sure you get it back where it belongs. You want everything nice and flat. And then once you have the flowers in where you want them, you're going to start filling in the space around them with this clear frit that you've made. And you want to pack it in and make sure you fill all the little spaces, because as it warms and starts to move, you don't want it to be able to move very far. So I've got them pretty much where I want them. I think I will add a little bit more green to this one, but I need to make sure that around all of these flowers, I pile enough frit and it's small enough that it packs them in a way that they cannot move in the kiln. And so I'm gonna have to just really pick the right piece to fit in here in each one of those little spaces. It's very fiddly work, it's very tedious, but if you want everything to stay the way you've put it, you really have to make sure it's packed in properly. If you don't, or if you just pile frit on top of it, it will move and spread. And once you've got the composition, you really don't want that to happen. So I'll do the 2 Lily of the Valley sprigs for this one. This one will have all the flowers for 4 kids. And the rest of them I'm just going to do floral. Although I may do one for myself with tiny little poppies and tiny little things that look like daffodils. Once you've got every flower anchored with little tiny bits of glass around it, then you can start laying bigger pieces across the whole top. That way nothing will move in the kiln and you'll get enough glass to both fill the mold and to cap the flowers. So when you're filling, you're going to come up to like water level, and then you're going to heap up an extra little bit in the center, but you want to avoid going over top of that little post because you want to maintain the hole that goes through it. Alrighty, these are ready to be fired, and I threw in a little undersea heart to fill the kiln. These are done. Let's take a look. Oh my goodness, how pretty. Oh, some of the flowers on this one. Oops, let's see if we can get it out of here. Beautiful. This one, some of the poppies were too close to the edge. So that one didn't work out as well. Let's see if this one worked out. Lovely. And then I just have to clean these, take the rest of them out. And that's another Mother's Day project done. Most of these turned out really well. Fortunately, the ones that are gifts turned out great. That one for my daughter-in-law. The grayish Lily of the Valley turned a nice bright white at a full fuse. The one for my mom with everybody's flower worked great. It's a little bit textured on the top, which it shouldn't be. The rest of them worked out really well. And the little undersea worked out really well. Although there is a little texture. So mine did not work out well. Let's get this in the camera. Where the poppies were too close to the edge and I didn't have enough glass, clear glass to keep them in place, they got stretched. So that one's not good. And the ones where there was a little bit of texture, my mom's had a little bit, I didn't like the texture because I didn't have enough glass in there. I just ground it down and now I'm going to put it in for a fire polish. Fire polish is done. And these are lovely. I'll clean them up and string them on a chain and be ready for Mother's Day. These two work really well with a double rope, but this one, because it's so much bigger, I went with this oval link.